And then that guy looked at me and said, "Hey, why are you talking to yourself?" And I said, "Myself? I'm here with me, myself, and I." Okay, didn't see you there. Welcome back to Zuko Builds. Today we're building this massive dining table. It's a very simple design. I wish I can show you in frame all at once, but it's so big. It takes up most of my shop. But super simple design, very sleek, very minimalist, but sturdy as heck. And I'm stoked to show you guys how I built this. Let's get right into it. Okay guys, this table is about 8 feet. We'll call it 8 feet. So the first thing I'm gonna do is take a whole 8-foot long board and clean up one edge on the table saw. Once I have an edge cleaned up on all of my boards, I'll flip it over, put the straight edge against the fence, and then rip them down to final width. Now let's go ahead and work on the legs, or more of a base in this situation. For each side, I'm gonna have 6 boards glued into a panel that ends up being about 30 inches wide. So I'll go ahead and cut out my 12 boards to make those panels on the miter saw. I will note that I am cutting these a little bit larger just to make the glue up easier. If you cut them exactly, when you glue them up, you have to make sure that everything's lined up perfectly. If you give yourself about an inch of wiggle room, then you can glue it up, not worry about everything not lining up perfectly, and chop off the excess. So I didn't record myself ripping these down to their final width, but you'll go ahead and do that before the glue up. Usually when I do panels, I'll add in some dowels or something to help the alignment, but for this situation, I didn't. These boards were pretty straight as it is, and I gave myself some wiggle room with their length. And whenever you're doing panels, make sure to add cauls just to keep everything nice and flat. If you don't know what cauls are, they're just pretty much scrap pieces of wood with some sort of tape so that the glue doesn't stick to it, and this is going to help keep everything flat. While you're putting tension inwards with your outer clamps, sometimes your panel will tend to bow, and this will prevent that. In this case, I have a caul running down the middle, but if it's a lot longer, I'll add more cauls throughout the center, and a caul on either end will be plenty. Then go ahead and start your glue up on all of your other pieces. I went ahead and did that already, so here's just a quick shaky shot of my progress. Here's a fun little quick tip for you guys. I was running out of clamps of the proper width, so I just got 2 clamps and tethered them like this, and I was able to put a lot of pressure on it. Since it's just glue holding all of this together, no dowels or anything, I went ahead and let the glue set overnight. So let it dry for about a full day, come back the next day, and take all of your clamps off. Now we can trim everything to its final dimension. Since I gave my panels that little bit of wiggle room, I went ahead and cleaned up one end with a circular saw and a straight edge. That way I can put that end up against my table saw fence and clean up the other side. I went ahead and did that for all 3 of my panels. And since I didn't use any dowels, these boards aren't perfectly flat, but not to the point where I need to do anything crazy to it. I'm just going through my sanding process, and that should flatten everything out. Starting at 80, moving up to 120, and finishing at 220. And then of course, more sanding, and then some more sanding, and then some more sanding. This took me about a day just to sand everything perfectly. This is the worst part. I was over sanding for a day, so now it is a new and beautiful day. Let's go ahead and start working on all of our support pieces. I'm gonna have 2 cross beams going across the top of the base that are right underneath the tabletop, and I'm still debating if I want to add another support going across the bottom or maybe a little bit higher than ground level. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. But I'm just using 2x4s and cutting them down to about 2x3s. And I forgot to mention earlier, but whenever you're ripping long pieces like this, make sure you have an outfeed table. There's no way you're gonna control it if you don't have one. So build an outfeed table if you don't have one, or use something. Next, I'll mark out where I'm gonna fasten my screws from. So I'm just taking a combination square, and you can set this to however deep you want these supports to go. But I'll take my combination square, mark a line, and then trace out the support beam. And keep in mind, this is the show face, so this will be on the outside. Now that we have that marked out, I'm gonna take a 3/8 inch drill bit. That way I can plug my screws with dowels after. And I'm gonna go 2 screws on each side of the supports. So 4 total for each support. And then of course the pilot hole to go all the way through. To attach the legs, I'm not doing any crazy math. I'm just taking the combination square that I used with it still set to the same distance I had it set when I traced those lines out. And I'll just bump up the support, making sure that everything sits nice and flush. And then I'll take a square just to make sure it's square. And of course, I'm totally blocking you right here, but I'm just adding 1 screw, and I'll double check to make sure everything is still lined up, making sure it's still square, and then I'll go ahead and fasten the second screw. Once you have one of the supports fastened to the legs, the other side is so much easier because you're not trying to hold up this huge panel. You have both of your hands to work freely, so the second beam always goes on a lot faster. But same step as before, use the combination square to set the distance from the end of the panel to your support, and double check to make sure it's square, and then fasten your 2 screws. If you have a second pair of hands, this will be a lot easier, but in the end, this is what it should look like so far. And when you flip it over, this is what it'll look like. Don't mind the boards going across the bottom, that's just there to level it out. So I got a little carried away working, but I went ahead and plugged those screw holes with dowels and glue, of course, and I cut the dowels flush and sanded everything so it's nice and buttery smooth. I also decided to add that support for the base, and this is what I ended up doing. It was about 12 inches off the ground. I think it adds a little bit of a better aesthetic than if it was just flush with the bottom. You probably thought I was done sanding by now, but you are wrong. Since I was still kind of working with the table, I figured I'd save the final grit to pretty much right before I'm about to finish this thing. So here I'm just going through with my 220 and cleaning up the tabletop. Alright, let's get into finishing. I'm gonna go ahead and do this in 2 stages. I'll start with the base. And for the base, I'm just using a spray-on polyurethane, just because there's a lot of little nooks and crannies with it already assembled. So I figured spray on multiple coats and that should be plenty for the base. And for the tabletop, I'll be applying water-based polyurethane, but I'll apply it with a brush just to give it that buttery smooth finish. And since this is one big flat surface, it's not gonna be a pain. So, yeah. If you guys wanna see how I finish all my projects, click the video on the top right. I waited a day for everything to dry, and now I'm gonna attach the tabletop, but there wasn't really a good way to show you guys of me doing it on camera, so I'll just kind of show you what I did. I'm using these right angle tabletop fasteners, and I'm putting one in each of the corners, as well as a few through the support beams across the center. Pretty straightforward. And just like that, you have this very simple, very clean, super sturdy dining table that is extremely massive. So, hope you guys followed along. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Yeah, sturdy. All right, there you have it, guys. This took me about four and a half days to build. That includes a lot of dry time with all the glue and staining it, or not staining it, but finishing it. Yeah, this was really fun to make. Like I said, it's pretty simple to build. It's just a lot of different parts being added together to make this huge dining table. But as you can see, it's super sturdy. Even though it's thin material, it's only 3/4 inch material for the legs as well as the top. It doesn't budge really. And I wish I can show it to you all in the frame at once, but I think I'll just go ahead and take some B-roll shots of it to give you some detailed shots of everything. But let me know if you guys followed along, if you plan on making something this big for yourself. If you liked the video, hit that thumbs up. It really does help the channel. And subscribe if you're not already. And I always forget how to close these things out. But follow me on Instagram at Zuko Builds. I'll post some pictures of this and you can order some custom work from there. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next week.